What's good, everyone? Welcome to Reddit Story Dose. I read the craziest stories from Reddit so you don't have to. Today we've got 5 stories that will blow your mind. Let's get started. From R. Petty Revenge. Coworker kept stealing my lunch, so I baked him a brownie he couldn't stop thinking about. For 3 months, my lunches kept disappearing from the office fridge. Sometimes it was a sandwich, neatly wrapped and labeled, gone by noon. Sometimes it was my leftover pasta, the container rinsed and abandoned on the counter like a crime scene with no body. Once, it was an entire meal prep container of teriyaki chicken I had spent 45 minutes making the night before. Hand-cutting the broccoli, marinating the chicken, portioning the rice into perfect little compartments. Gone. Vanished. I opened the fridge at 12:30 expecting to see my dinner from last night looking back at me, and instead I saw the empty shelf where it used to be, mocking me. I am not exaggerating when I say it ruined my mornings. I would walk into the office already bracing myself, already wondering what the hell I was going to do for lunch when, inevitably, my food was gone again. Have you ever stood in front of an open fridge at noon, stomach growling, looking at a bottle of someone else's salad dressing and a shriveled lemon? That was my life. I tried everything. I labeled my food. I wrote my name on the bag in thick Sharpie. I left passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge door that said things like, "Please respect other people's lunches," and "Stealing food is still stealing." None of it worked. The food kept vanishing. I started bringing PB&J because I figured nobody steals a kid's sandwich. Wrong. Even the PB&J was gone within 2 days. 2 slices of cheap white bread and some grape jelly. Whoever this person was, they had no shame and no standards. I asked our. I sat in that little glass-walled office and explained, calmly, that someone had been stealing my food for 3 months and I would like it to stop. The our representative nodded the way HR reps nod, full of sympathy and zero solutions. They said they could not put cameras in the break room. Privacy concerns. Liability. I asked our office manager next. She shrugged and said it was a workplace mystery. A workplace mystery. Like we were on an episode of CSI, Office Edition. Like I was supposed to laugh and move on and accept that some adult human in our office was stealing my groceries every single day. So I decided to solve it myself. I baked brownies. From scratch. Beautiful, fudgy, dark chocolate brownies. The kind with a glossy crackled top and gooey centers that pull apart when you break them. I used good cocoa. I melted real butter. I packed 2 of them into a clear Tupperware container, wrote my name on the lid in bold black Sharpie, and placed them at eye level in the fridge before our morning stand-up. I even patted the lid like a parent sending a kid off to school. What the thief did not know was that I had laced those brownies with the hottest habanero powder I could legally buy on Amazon. Not a normal amount. Not a fun prank amount. I am talking about a level of heat that I myself, the baker, could not have eaten without medical supervision. I had ground 3 Carolina Reapers and 2 ghost peppers into the batter while wearing kitchen gloves and a respirator mask I borrowed from my dad's woodshop. My eyes watered just opening the container the next morning. The smell coming off them was so intense the dog left the room. My boyfriend asked if I was making a chemical weapon. I told him to mind his business. I slid them into the fridge at 8:47 a.m. By 9:15, my coworker Karen had already commented on the smell wafting through the office. "Did somebody bring brownies?" she asked, half joking. I shrugged and stared at my monitor. By 11:45, both brownies were gone. The container was sitting on the top shelf, lid askew, completely empty. My heart actually skipped. I closed the fridge slowly, walked back to my desk, and waited. By 12:15, I heard it. The cough. A wet, ragged, panicky cough from somewhere on the other side of the cubicle wall. Then the choking. Then the absolutely undignified sound of a grown man trying to drink directly from the office water cooler tap, like a dog at a hose. The kind of slurping you only do in true emergencies. It was Brad, from accounting. Brad, who had been telling everyone for weeks that he was on a strict diet, and could not understand why he was not losing weight. Brad, who had complimented my cooking once at a holiday party and asked if I ever brought leftovers to the office. I had laughed at the time. I was not laughing now. Or actually, I was. Internally. I was laughing so hard internally that my face hurt from keeping it neutral. His face was the color of a fire hydrant. His eyes were streaming, mascara tear style, except Brad does not wear mascara, so it was just pure suffering rolling down his cheeks. He was holding his throat with one hand and frantically pointing at his mouth with the other, like he was trying to mime an opera. 3 coworkers stood around him in a confused little half-circle, asking if he was choking, asking if they should call someone, asking what he ate. He could not answer. He could only gesture, wild-eyed, like a man drowning on dry land. He could not even speak to lie about it. When he finally got enough water down to form words, he tried to play it cool. He cleared his throat about 6 times, wiped his face with a paper towel, and said in a hoarse, wrecked voice that he had eaten something spicy from a food truck on the way to work. We all stared at him. The food truck. At 7 in the morning. In our suburban office park where the closest food truck is at the farmer's market on Saturdays. Yeah, he said again, not making eye contact, really spicy tacos. Sure, Brad, spicy breakfast tacos. From the imaginary food truck. I stood up from my desk. I walked, slowly, casually, over to the fridge. I opened the door and made a big show of looking inside, scanning each shelf, lifting up containers, peering into the back. I closed the fridge gently. I walked back to my desk. And then, in a voice loud enough to carry across the entire open-plan floor, I announced, "Hey, that's weird. Somebody took my brownies again." Brad would not look at me. He stared into his keyboard like it contained the secrets of the universe. His ears were still red. 2 weeks later, Brad was let go in a round of layoffs that very conveniently included him at the top of the list. I cannot prove the brownies had anything to do with it, but I noticed our office manager smiling at me on her way to deliver the news, the smallest, most knowing little smile, like we shared a secret. I smiled back. Nobody steals my lunch anymore. Next up, HR said I must work exactly 8 hours. So I walked out mid-email at 5 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds PM sharp. My company hired a new HR director last spring, and from the moment she walked through the door, you could tell she was on a mission. She had this brisk, no-nonsense way about her, the kind of person who carried a clipboard like it was a weapon. Within her first week, she'd already coined a phrase she would use over and over again in the months that followed: time theft. According to her, our office was a hotbed of it. Employees were lingering past 5 o'clock too often. People were getting too friendly with their coworkers. Lunches were stretching too long. There was, in her words, a culture of slippage that needed correction. She was going to bring back discipline. The first week, she rolled out her new policy with all the ceremony of a general announcing a campaign. Every salaried employee, myself included, would now be tracked to the minute. We had to clock in at exactly 9 o'clock a.m. and clock out at exactly 5 o'clock p.m., with 1 hour for lunch. 8 hours of work. Not 7 hours and 55 minutes. Not 8 hours and 10. Exactly 8. She gathered us in the main conference room to explain it. I remember the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead while she stood at the front, hands clasped, looking at us like a teacher staring down a classroom of suspected cheaters. From now on, she said, you stop working at 5 o'clock p.m. No exceptions. The company does not pay for unauthorized overtime. Someone in the back asked, what about client calls that run over? She didn't even blink. No exceptions. What if we're in the middle of something? No exceptions. She made it very clear that anyone who failed to comply would face disciplinary action. She put it in writing. She had us all sign acknowledgement forms, and I remember the strange weight of that pen in my hand as I scribbled my name. Something about it felt off, like signing a contract written in a language I half understood. But I signed it. We all did. Now, here's the thing. I'm a project manager. My job is basically a slow-burning fire of email threads, contract reviews, client calls, and tying up loose ends at the end of the day. The last hour of my workday is usually the most important hour. That's when the East Coast clients are wrapping up, when contracts get finalized, when the day's loose threads finally get tied off. Up until that point, I had been routinely staying until 5:30 or 5:45 to finish things. Sometimes I took client calls at 5:15. I never got paid for that time. I did it because I cared about my projects, because I liked the people I worked with, because that's what professionals do. But she said no exceptions. She'd look me right in the eye when she said it. So fine. No exceptions. The next day, at 4:59 p.m., I was on a call with one of our biggest clients. We're talking a multi-million-dollar account, the kind of client whose name gets dropped in board meetings. We were 3 minutes into a discussion about a contract amendment, the kind of detailed back and forth that you really don't want to interrupt. He was mid-sentence about pricing tiers when my desk clock ticked over. 5 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds p.m. I felt my heart pick up a little. My mouth went dry. Then I took a breath and cut him off. I am so sorry, I said, as politely as I could manage, but my workday has officially ended. Per our new hour policy, I must end this call immediately. Please email me your concerns and I will respond at 9:00 a.m. tomorrow. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear him breathing. Are you joking? He finally said. His voice had that flat, disbelieving tone people get when they think they've misheard something. I am not. You're hanging up on me? I have to. I'm sorry. I hung up. My hand actually shook a little as I set the phone down. Then I closed my laptop, right in the middle of 3 half-written emails. I just left them sitting there, cursors blinking. I grabbed my bag, walked past my coworker Dan who was staring at me with his mouth slightly open, and I walked out the front door at exactly 5 hours 0 minutes and 1 second. The walk to my car felt surreal. The air smelled like spring and exhaust fumes and somebody's freshly cut grass from a few blocks over. My ears were ringing a little. I drove home with the radio off because I needed to think. The next morning, I knew before I even sat down that something was up. The receptionist gave me a look. My phone had 4 missed calls. The client, as it turned out, had escalated overnight. He'd emailed our CEO directly, demanding to know what kind of unprofessional operation we were running. By 9:15, the CEO had emailed me asking for an explanation. I sat at my desk, took a long sip of coffee, and replied with surgical calm. I forwarded HR's policy. I attached my signed acknowledgement form. I quoted her exact words, no exceptions. I hit send and waited. Within an hour, the CEO had emailed our. I know this because the whole office basically had its ear pressed against the wall. HR doubled down. She replied to the thread, looping me in, saying the policy was clear and I was right to follow it. She actually used the phrase, exemplary compliance. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. So I kept complying. Over the next 2 weeks, I followed that policy with the dedication of a monk. At 5:00 p.m., I stopped. Mid-call, mid-email, mid-meeting. I once stood up and walked out of a conference room while a vendor was still presenting slides. I left a quote half-finished. I left a contract review halfway through the red lines. I let a critical email about a deliverable sit in my drafts folder overnight. Every single day, I left at exactly 5 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds, no matter what was happening, no matter who was talking. Things started to break. I missed deadlines I absolutely would have made under the old setup. Projects fell behind. A vendor partnership nearly fell apart because I couldn't return a same-day call. 3 different department heads emailed HR to complain. I heard through the grapevine that the head of sales had stormed into the CEO's office and slammed a folder on his desk. By week 3, the new hour director was no longer with the company. There was no farewell email. No cake in the break room. She was just gone, like she'd been edited out of a photograph. The old policy quietly returned. The CEO sent out a memo about flexibility and trust and treating employees like adults. He thanked us for our patience during the transition. Nobody mentioned her name again. I now leave between 5:15 and 5:45, like a normal person. With normal judgment. Sometimes I stay later if a client really needs me. Sometimes I duck out at 5:02 if there's nothing pressing. The way it was always supposed to work. This next one is wild. AITA for going to my cousin's wedding even though my mom forbid it? My cousin Emma and I grew up like sisters. Not in the casual way people throw that phrase around, but in the real, bone-deep way where you cannot picture your childhood without the other person in it. From age 5 to 18, we were inseparable. Every Friday night, one of us was sleeping at the other's house. We had this routine where we would build a blanket fort in the living room, eat way too many gummy bears, and watch the same 3 movies on repeat until we fell asleep. I can still hear her laugh during the scary parts. This loud, ridiculous giggle that made it impossible to actually be afraid of anything. Summer vacations were always together. Our moms would rent a cabin by the lake and we would spend 2 weeks sunburned and happy, catching frogs and pretending we were explorers discovering uncharted territory. Matching Halloween costumes every single year without fail. One year we were salt and pepper shakers. Another year, peanut butter and jelly. We thought we were the funniest people alive. She was my best friend before I even understood what that word meant. Then our mothers had a falling out. I still do not fully understand what happened, even now, 10 years later. From what I have pieced together, it was something about a family property, a house my grandparents left behind, that was sold without mutual agreement. My aunt apparently signed off on a deal my mother never approved. Or maybe it was the other way around. The details shift depending on who you ask, and nobody wants to give a straight answer. What I do know is that words were exchanged. Ugly ones, the kind you cannot take back. I remember hearing my mother on the phone one night, her voice sharp and trembling at the same time, saying things like, "You have always been selfish," and, "I will never forgive this." I stood in the hallway in my pajamas, my stomach tight, not fully understanding what was happening but sensing that something was breaking. Lines were drawn, and suddenly, 2 sisters who had been close their entire lives refused to be in the same room. My mother made it very clear that she expected the same from me. She sat me down at the kitchen table, her jaw set in that way she has when a decision has already been made, and told me the rules. I was not to speak to my aunt's family. I was not to visit their house. I was not to call, text, or maintain any kind of relationship with Emma. "They are not our family anymore," she said. And the way she said it, flat and final, made it clear there was no room for discussion. I was 16 when this mandate came down. And at 16, living under your mother's roof, eating food she puts on the table, dependent on her for everything. You do not have the power to fight it. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. I remember lying in bed that first week, scrolling through old photos of Emma and me on my phone, my chest aching with something I could not name. I typed out a dozen messages to her and deleted every single one. Emma and I lost touch for almost 8 years. 8 years. I graduated high school. I went to college. I got my first apartment, my first real job, my first heartbreak. And through all of it, there was this Emma-shaped hole in my life that I just learned to walk around. Last year, through social media, we reconnected. She followed me first. I stared at the notification for a full minute, my heart hammering, before I followed her back. Then she sent a message. Just, "Hi stranger. I have missed you so much." And I sat on my couch and cried. It was like no time had passed. We talked for hours that first night, voices overlapping, finishing each other's sentences the way we used to. She told me about her job, her apartment, her dog named Biscuit. I told her about my life, the parts that felt worth sharing and the parts that felt too heavy to carry alone. She listened the way she always did, really listened, with her whole attention. Then she told me she was getting married. Her voice went soft and happy when she talked about her fiancé, and I could hear the smile in it. And then she paused, and I heard her take a breath, and she said, "I want you there. I know it is complicated. But it would not feel right without you." I told my mother. I do not know what I expected. Maybe some small crack in the wall she had built. Maybe a reluctant nod. Instead, her response was immediate and absolute. "If you go to that wedding," she said, her eyes locked on mine, "I will consider it a betrayal. You are choosing sides. Family loyalty means honoring my boundaries, even when you do not understand them." My older brother backed her up. "Just let it go," he said, like it was that simple. Like Emma was someone I could just let go of. I thought about it for weeks. I lay awake at night running through every possible outcome. I imagined going and facing my mother's anger. I imagined not going and facing myself in the mirror. knowing I let fear make my decisions. I imagined Emma standing at the altar, looking out at the seats, and not seeing me there. And then I went anyway. The wedding was in this small garden venue outside the city. White chairs on green grass, string lights in the trees, the late afternoon sun turning everything golden. I almost did not get out of the car. I sat in the parking lot with my hands on the steering wheel, my pulse pounding in my ears, and I almost drove away. But then I walked in. And Emma saw me from across the lawn. She was in her wedding dress, this simple white gown with lace sleeves, and her face just crumbled. She ran over, bouquet still in hand, and threw her arms around me so hard I stumbled. We stood there holding each other, both of us crying, and she whispered, "You came. I cannot believe you came." Her mother, my aunt, found me during the reception. She looked older than I remembered, her hair streaked with gray, and when she hugged me, she held on for a long time. "I have missed you, sweetheart," she whispered, and her voice cracked on the last word. I could not speak. I just nodded into her shoulder. I danced. I laughed. I gave a toast that made everyone cry. I felt like I had recovered something I thought was gone forever, like finding a piece of yourself you did not realize you had lost until it was back in place. And then the fallout. My mother found out through photos on social media. Someone tagged me. I should have expected it, but the call still hit like a punch to the stomach. Her voice was cold and controlled, which was worse than yelling. She said she was deeply hurt. She said I had made my choice. My older brother called an hour later and said I was disrespectful, that I had embarrassed the family. 2 other relatives on my mother's side reached out separately to say they were disappointed, that I had taken my aunt's side, that I had made everything worse. None of them asked me how the wedding was. None of them asked if I was okay. But here is what I keep coming back to, the thing I turn over in my mind every time the guilt creeps in. I did not go to that wedding to hurt my mother. I did not go to make a statement about the property dispute. I do not even have an opinion about the property dispute. I went because my cousin, someone I loved like a sister for 13 years, someone whose laugh I can still hear when I close my eyes, invited me to the happiest day of her life. And I could not say no. I could not look at myself and live with saying no. I am 26 years old. I should be old enough to decide who I love without needing permission. But the silence from half my family says otherwise. Am I the jerk for going? You're gonna love this one. My mother-in-law wore white to my wedding, so I had security escort her out of the reception. When my fiancé proposed, I knew right then, even with the ring still warm on my finger, that there would be problems with his mother. She had spent the previous 2 years referring to me as that girl. Not by name. Never by name. She would call him on Sunday afternoons and ask, in a voice loud enough that I could hear it from the next room, whether he was really sure I was the one. She had once leaned across the Thanksgiving table, between the green beans and the gravy boat, and asked me whether I was planning on losing weight before the wedding. I had smiled. I had said something polite. I had gone into the bathroom afterward and stared at my own reflection until my hands stopped shaking. Still, we were determined to keep things positive. My fiancé believed, deeply and stubbornly, that his mother would come around if we gave her enough chances. So we invited her to every engagement event. We asked her opinion on the venue, on the flowers, on the menu. We sent her photos of bakery samples. We tried, genuinely, with our whole chests, to make her feel included. 3 months before the wedding, the conversations about her dress started. I sent out a polite email to all the family members on both sides. I kept it warm and casual. I reminded everyone that the bride would, of course, be wearing white, and that we would love it if guests selected colors from a shared palette. I attached a little image with the swatches: navy, blush, sage, and mauve. Soft, romantic, autumnal. None of them, I want to be clear, were white. None of them were ivory. None of them were anything that could even squint into the same neighborhood as white. My mother-in-law responded with a single sentence. She would think about it. I read that email 3 times. I showed it to my fiancé. He sighed the sigh of a man who has been sighing about his mother since he was 8 years old. I decided not to press it. I figured it was self-explanatory. Most adults understand, at a fundamental cellular level, that you do not wear white to somebody else's wedding. A month before the wedding, my fiance's sister called me. I could hear it in her voice before she even said anything, that tight, breathless tone people get when they're trying to deliver bad news gently. She bought a dress, she said. Okay. It is, very obviously, a wedding dress. I sat down on the edge of the couch. How obvious. Ivory. Floor length. Beaded. There's a shimmer to it. She keeps calling it champagne. It is not champagne. I have eyes. I closed mine. Okay. I called my mother-in-law that same night. I kept my voice as light and friendly as I could. I asked her, very politely, if she would send me a picture of the dress she had picked out, just so I could see it. She refused. She said she wanted it to be a * surprise. I'd really love to see it ahead of time, I said. It's champagne, dear, not white. Could I see it anyway? No. I told her, very plainly, that white was not appropriate for a guest at the wedding. She repeated, slowly, like I was the unreasonable one, that her dress was champagne. I asked her one more time to send a picture. She refused again, then changed the subject to the weather. That night, my fiancé and I sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours. We had the kind of long, exhausted conversation you have when you finally accept that someone is going to do the thing they have been telling you, in every signal short of words, that they are going to do. We made a plan. We met with the venue coordinator that week. We talked to her about it directly, no euphemisms. We talked to the security team they kept on retainer. We added a line to our wedding contract that gave the coordinator the authority to escort out any guest who arrived in white attire after a single warning. We told my fiance's sister, who took an audible breath on the phone and then said, "Okay. I'll handle her at the arrival. I'll bring a backup dress in my car. She is a saint." I told her so. The morning of the wedding, I tried not to think about it. I was getting my hair done. I was holding my bouquet up to the mirror. I was crying a little. The good kind of crying, the kind where my best friend was dabbing at my eyes with a tissue and telling me not to ruin the mascara. And then my mother-in-law arrived at the ceremony in the dress. It was a wedding dress. There is no other honest word for it. Ivory satin, a beaded bodice that caught the light every time she moved, a floor-length skirt, and a train, a 3-foot train, dragging along the gravel of the parking lot behind her. A literal 3-foot train. At my wedding, the sister intercepted her before she made it to the doors. I wasn't there for it, but I heard the play-by-play afterward. She told her mother, gently, that she could not come into the ceremony dressed like that. She had a backup outfit folded neatly in the back seat of her car, navy, perfectly nice, picked out specifically for this purpose. She held it out. My mother-in-law refused. She straightened her shoulders and said she had every right to wear what she wanted to her son's wedding. The sister went and got the venue coordinator. The coordinator was calm and professional and quietly steely in a way I will be grateful for until the day I die. She explained that, per the contract, my mother-in-law could either change or leave the property. My mother-in-law refused to do either. She crossed her arms and stood in the parking lot like a woman planting a flag. The coordinator called security. 2 large gentlemen, both of them in suits, walked her, 3-foot train and all, out to the curb. She missed the ceremony. She missed the reception. She missed every single moment of her own son's wedding because she could not, for the length of a single afternoon, bring herself to wear a different dress. My fiancé did not say a word about it during the reception. Not one. He danced with his sister to a slow song and held her a little tighter than usual at the end. He gave a toast that thanked, by name, the people who had shown up to support us. He kissed me on the forehead between courses. He did not mention his mother at all. A week later, she sent us a long letter, 4 pages, single-spaced, saying she had been humiliated and mistreated and that we owed her an apology. We did not respond. She has not seen us since the wedding. Her loss. Okay, get ready for this. My mom replied to my ex's drunk texts, then catfished him into a 6-month fake relationship. I broke up with my boyfriend of 2 years in April. He cheated on me, and not in a one-time drunken mistake kind of way, but in a months-long, multiple people, carefully coordinated kind of way. I found out the way most people find out, which is to say accidentally and all at once, in a single afternoon that felt like a building collapsing in slow motion. The breakup itself was dramatic. There was screaming. There was a thrown coffee mug, which I am not proud of. There was him sitting on the floor of our hallway with his head in his hands, telling me he could explain, while I packed a duffel bag with shaking hands. I blocked him on everything except text, because we still shared an apartment lease and I needed at least one line of communication open in case something practical came up, like the gas bill or who was getting the couch. I told myself it was logistics. It was mostly logistics. He started drunk texting me about 3 weeks later. The first one came in at 1:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. I remember because I was lying in my friend Hannah's guest bed staring at the ceiling, and my phone lit up the entire room. Long, rambling messages about how much he missed me, how he had changed, how I was the love of his life and he had been an idiot and please, just let him explain. I read them and felt nothing. Or rather, I felt a tired kind of nothing, the way you feel when someone is shouting at you through a thick wall. I did not respond. I figured he would burn himself out eventually, the way men like him always seem to. He did not burn out. In June, I drove up to my parents' house for a long weekend. I needed cheap food and a yard and someone to do my laundry while pretending they were not doing my laundry. On Saturday afternoon I left my phone on the kitchen counter and went out to the garage to help my dad wrestle with the lawnmower, which had developed what he called a personality. When I came back inside, sweaty and smelling like gasoline, my mother was sitting at the kitchen table with my phone face down in front of her. She slid it across the wood toward me with an expression I could not read. Something between guilt and pride. Mostly pride. She said, "I hope you don't mind. I've been replying to him." I assumed she meant something motherly and firm. A polite, "Please leave my daughter alone" message. The kind of thing a mom does once and feels very brave about. I picked up the phone and scrolled up. I kept scrolling. For the past 2 weeks, my mother had been responding to my ex's drunk texts. As me. From my number. In a soft, wounded, slightly nostalgic voice that I had to admit sounded uncannily like the version of me he probably remembered. She had been telling him she was so sorry. She had been thinking about him too. She missed him. She had grown so much. She had been signing the messages with my name and a single lowercase x, which, for the record, I have never done in my life. I think I made a sound. Some kind of small, animal noise. "Mom," I said. "Mom, what are you doing? What is this? What is happening?" She just smiled at me. That terrible serene smile she gets when she has already decided how something is going to go. "I have a plan," she said. Over the next 6 months, my mother conducted what I can only describe as a slow, patient, surgical psychological operation against my ex-boyfriend. She told him she was reflecting on what went wrong between us, that she had been doing a lot of journaling. She told him she had started therapy with a woman named Linda who was really helping her see patterns. She told him she had a new job at a marketing firm she invented. She told him she had moved to Portland for a fresh start, because she needed mountains and rain and to be somewhere that didn't remind her of him. My mother has never been to Portland. My mother has never voluntarily been west of Denver. She told him she had gotten a dog. A golden retriever named Biscuit. She pulled pictures off some random Pinterest board and sent them to him at carefully spaced intervals, with captions like, "He's such a goof," and "Biscuit says hi." He told her Biscuit was beautiful. He told her Biscuit had kind eyes. My mother showed me that text and I had to put my forehead on the kitchen table. In September she told him she had started seeing someone. A wonderful man. A doctor, actually. Pediatric something. Very kind, very tall, very gentle with Biscuit. My ex took 11 minutes to respond and then said he was so happy for her, truly, she deserved it. My mother read that to me out loud in her car in the Trader Joe's parking lot and then said, flatly, "He is dying inside. I can feel it through the screen." She let him sit with it for 2 weeks. Then she told him she had broken up with the doctor, because the doctor reminded her too much of someone she used to love. She did not name him. She did not have to. My ex started drunk texting again that same night, longer and more pathetic than ever, talking about fate and second chances and how he had never stopped praying for her. I want to be clear that my mother does not pray. In December, she dropped the final piece. She told my ex she was getting married. To the doctor. They had reconciled, talked everything through, and decided life was too short. The wedding was in Cabo. He was invited. He responded within 30 seconds. Just one line. Are you joking? She said she was not joking. She said she wanted closure, real closure, and that she wanted him there to see her happy and finally let go of whatever this was between them. She gave him a date that did not exist on any real calendar of hers and the name of a real resort in Cabo that had no idea any of us existed. He flew to Cabo. He actually flew to Cabo. He booked a flight, packed a bag, put on a linen shirt, and went. He sat at that resort for 3 days waiting for a wedding that was never going to happen, sending increasingly desperate texts. Where are you? Did I get the date wrong? Please just tell me where to go. My mother responded one time, on the morning of the fake wedding, with a single line. Why would I ever marry you? Then she blocked him. After it was all over, sitting on her back porch with a glass of wine, I asked her, finally, why? Why all of it? Why 6 months of her life on a man who was not even hers to be angry at? She looked out at the yard for a long moment. He made you feel small, she said. I wanted him to feel small for as long as you would let me. I am almost 40 years old. My mother is officially the most petty woman I have ever known. I love her completely.